Hello and welcome to Wellness Wednesday. Pramelia Parham here with Vibrational Healing. I'm a certified body code and emotion code practitioner. I'm talking to you from my office in Parksville on beautiful Vancouver Island in Canada. Today, I wanted to talk to you about Remembrance Day. Now, this year, Remembrance Day in Canada falls on November the 11th, which it does every year, and this year it's on Monday. So I thought leading up to Monday, I would give you some information about Remembrance Day and how it got started. So we do observe a minute of silence on the 11th month, the 11th day, and the 11th hour. And that came about actually from the First World War. That was the day and the time that the armistice, it was called armistice, and it was signed that ended the First World War. Now, this is very significant to me and my family because my maternal grandfather, Frank Goddard, actually fought at Vimy Ridge in the First World War. And so, yes, we do want to remember the men and women who went to war for us so that our country could stay safe. And not only the ones who lost their lives, fortunately in my family, nobody lost their life at the war, but also to remember the men and women who are still in our military and are going to countries with conflict to keep peace. And that is what's very, very important. I wear a bird of peace on my poppy because I really believe how important this is for our countries to be the ones that are actually that are the symbols of peace. So on November the 11th, we are actually, the poppy, to let you know, is the symbol of the Remembrance Day. And a few facts about the poppy, which I just found fascinating. So I'm going to have to read them to you. So here's a few facts about the poppy. Obviously, what I said, it's a symbol of Remembrance Day. And it became widespread in Europe after the soils in France and Belgium became rich in lime deposits from debris and rubble that was left after fighting in the First World War. So we've had these little red flowers were popping up all over the place. There you go, poppies popping up. And so they were flourishing around also on not only on the countryside, but also around the grave sites of the fallen and dead soldiers. So in 1915, you may remember this, that John McCrae, a doctor serving with the Canadian Artillery, he famously made a note of this phenomena of the poppies and called his poem Flanders Fields, which I believe we all learned in school. So there was also a couple of women that were involved in creating the information and what we would call today marketing of the poppy. So Moyna Michael, she was on duty in a reading room where she had read John McCrae's poem. And so after reading it, she made a personal pledge to always wear a red poppy of Flanders Field as a sign of remembrance and for keeping the faith with all those who had died. And in 1920, Anna Guerin, she was called the French Poppy Lady. She was inspired by Moyna's idea of the poppy as a memorial flower and felt that the scope of the memorial poppy could be expanded to help the needy. So in 1923, Madame Guerin visited Canada, convinced what was called the Great War Veterans Association, because the First World War was called the Great War, and she then had them adopt the poppy as a symbol of remembrance. And it became a fundraising. And so now we just leading up to Remembrance Day, there's people on many street corners and by stores who have something that you can purchase a poppy and for a donation, and that money now is going to many different charities. So it was an amazing uh, something for her that she actually did and created to help fundraise. So today, the Poppy Campaign is one of the Royal Canadian Legion's most important programs, and the money raised from donations provide direct assistance for veterans, any veterans in financial distress, as well as funding for any medical equipment that they might need, medical research, home services, and long-term care facilities, and many other purposes. So as I mentioned, my maternal grandfather fought in the First World War. My father, Ted Parham, he fought in the Second World War as in the British Navy, because he was too young to join the Canadian Navy at 16. So the British Navy would take him. And so he went and fought for the British Navy in the Second World War. And then he was living in Canada at the time. His family had immigrated from England to Canada. So he came back to Canada and was able to transfer into the Canadian Navy. And in the end went to, well, I shouldn't say it's the end, but he actually went to what we call the Korean conflict. It wasn't considered a war, but he actually went to that twice with the Canadian Navy. So I do remember that because I was just a young child. I remember him being away. I don't necessarily remember the war, but I remember him being away a lot. And it was quite traumatic for my mother, who was not only, looking after me as a young child, but also, she would have understood the scope and the depth of him being in Korea and finding out what was going on and happening over there. So as I mentioned before, Remembrance Day has always been a very important day in my family history due to our military connections with my grandfather and my father, and also my uncles, my mother's brothers. There was a number of my mother's brothers who also joined the Air Force and joined the Army and joined the Navy. So yes. What more do I want to tell you about that? Well, I just want to say, it's November. Let's remember. Let's remember the men and women who went to these conflicts and these wars, lost their lives for sure. We want to remember them, and we want to pay homage to them and make their lives worth significant as to why that happened. But we also want to recognize the wonderful military that we have, both here in Canada and the United States and Britain and all over the world, the ones that are really trying to keep peace in the world. So that's what I'm going to leave with you. It's November. Please remember Parmelia Parham, Vibrational Healing. I'm a certified body code and emotion code practitioner.